So I'm glad I said that. Sincere apologies. We came straight from the launch of the MEM across town, and where the whole meeting had gone over by about an hour, and that's a good thing in a way, because it meant the conversations we were having there were vibrant. The third thing to say is why we're here. These economic monitors are supposed to stimulate conversation. They're supposed to be opportunities for the frank exchange of views. So we're not here for a lecture, and we're not here for a polite conversation. I think the situation in Malawi is really very serious. What the country's been through in the last 3 years in terms of cyclones, pandemics, cholera, macroeconomic shocks has been devastating. The world has had a bad 3 years, but Malawi has had a particularly bad 3 years. And the resilience of the people is something that astonishes us in the World Bank. Our role is to work with the government. So what we've been trying to do over the last 3 years is to support the government to extend programs to the poorest, to the most vulnerable people in the country, to try to mitigate them somewhat from the impact of the various shocks that have hit the country. But the second thing we try to do is make sure that the country has a future. Having a future means putting in place the policies that can create the economic recovery driven by private sector. Those are the two big things we've been trying to do in the last 3 years. And at the end of last year, there was a big moment in which the country finally came to an agreement with the IMF, which meant that we could restart budget support on the basis of a set of economic policies. So today's report is really trying to assess, where are we now? Have those policies started to work? Have we seen any impact from those policies yet in the daily lives of individuals? So that's where I'm going to end. I just want to say I'm so pleased that we're here today. We don't normally come to Blantyre, and we've never been to MUBAS before. I want to come back to MUBAS. I want to see the work that the World Bank is supporting here. But I want to do more of these discussions with students, young people, so that we can hear your views and integrate your perspective into our work. So thank you so much for your patience. Once again, apologies, and that's it from me. Back to our team, I think. Thank you.
A big hand for Mr. Hugh. Right. So as he's sitting down, I would just like to outline the program of events that is going to happen here. There will be a report that has already been alluded to by Mr. Hugh Riddle, and that report will be presented by Mr. Jacob Angel and testify Bekalu, and then after that there will be a panel discussion moderated by Associate Professor Fades Mwale, and then after that, or within the panel discussion, that's when we are going to have an access to asking questions on the report, asking questions on the panel itself, and after that, then we'll follow the program to the end. And the very end, a part of it is that there will be a competition read to you for the students to enter, for those who are willing, and there will be a period of time that we're going to do what you'll be asked to do, and then that will be the marks of the end. Thank you. So currently, I would like to call upon Jacob Angel and Tesfaye Bekalu up front for the report.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you to the entire MUBAS team. Thank you, PS. But most of all, thank you to you for making time and for waiting patiently. I understand that you probably have many other things to do, but I think for us, this is a really, really exciting opportunity. We, I think, spend far too little time in universities. I used to spend all my time in universities, but it's been a few years now. And I think for us, we launch these reports all the time. You know, the Malawi Economic Monitor comes out every 6 months. We launch it at usually somewhere in the Longway. We have some government officials, we have some development partners there, and we have some polite conversation. But I think we don't really have the kind of engagement with the youth, the people who are going to be living through the kind of conditions that we're analyzing for the longest, and who might have very strong views, might disagree, might agree very strongly. And so I would like to just welcome that. I think if you have questions, if you want to clarify things, but I think most of all, if you disagree and you have your own interpretation of events, please do come in and we can have that discussion later. And of course, please always, we're always available by email for longer discussions around these issues. So I lead the macroeconomics program at the World Bank in Malawi, macroeconomics, trade and investment. I lead the publication of this report every 6 months, the Malawi Economic Monitor, together with a large team of experts. But of course we get contributions from private sector, from civil society, from government, and a lot of data as well, and of course also from academics. I think the last time I was actually at MUBAS, we were in a very heated debate with your seconded economics professor, Bechani Chireni, not too long ago. And today when we saw him, he mentioned he's got a very different perspective now that he's on the other side of these issues. But always great to be back here, and I look forward to continuing this discussion. So of course, as we always do in these Malawi Economic Monitors, we have a special topic, this time on the importance of improving the health of the country's watersheds for the overall economy, and my colleague Tesfaye up front will present on that after me. But I think our primary goal in producing the MEM, the Malawi Economic Monitor, every 6 months, is to provide data-driven analysis on the economy to help support better informed policymaking, but also wider public debate, to really inform the media, to inform the public what we think is going on in the economy. And that's intended to help Malawi reach the higher rates of inclusive and sustainable growth that are needed to achieve the aspirations of Malawi 2063. So I'm not going to go through the entire presentation, I'm not going to go through the entire report. You'll be able to pick a copy up afterwards, and it's available online. I'll go through some of the select issues because I think most of all it'll be good to hear from the panelists, from the academics assembled here, as well as from you. But I think we focus every edition quite extensively on what is going on in the macroeconomy. And of course that's been an issue, as Hugh mentioned before, that's really been at the top of people's minds. And so a lot of the issues that are at the core of the economics profession, inflation, debt, exchange rate management, and so on, have received a lot of attention and a lot of deserved scrutiny. Maybe just to pause, how many of you are actually studying economics? How many are studying sciences? Okay, more of a science audience. Law or no? Okay. So we are going to discuss just in a little bit what sort of the main issues are from our perception in the current economy. And in this issue, our focus has really been on, we've had some of these quite painful reforms for many, the exchange rate alignment. We've had a lot of cuts in public services. And the question is, for us, this has been probably the most severe economic crisis in many decades. Is Malawi turning the corner? Is the economy getting better? Are we seeing improvements? And we've had some quite important decisions in recent months around the exchange rate, around moving towards a reduction of the deficit, fiscal consolidation, monetary tightening, so that just means an increase in interest rates, as well as quite significant reform programs through the IMF, the new ECF facility, as well as the World Bank. And of course, none of these things happen instantly, but we do want to find out, are they actually beginning to have their impact, their desired impact? Now, of course, there's no quick fixes, there's no silver bullets here, but I think we are trying to assess whether we're beginning to get out of this deep crisis that the country has been in. Now, the report covers all kinds of issues that I won't go into here. It'll discuss how the global and regional context is impacting Malawi. It'll provide a little bit more detail on these ECF programs and these budget support programs that you hear a lot in the newspaper, in the media, on social media as well. We look into more detail to understand what is really going on in the fuel sector, why fuel prices are as high as they are. We look at the labor market, the prospects for employment, especially also for young people, but also look at really is the labor market, is the employment situation beginning to improve? And then we focus quite a bit on the so-called ATM sectors. What is the potential for mining? Is it possible to scale up tourism? And of course, agriculture and food security also deserve a deep dive on their own, given how central they are to the performance of the overall economy. So I guess the key question, and this is a little bit of a sort of diagram or model that I'm going to lay out here, is what are we actually turning the corner from? What is the argument we're trying to make? So I'll first back up a little bit and provide background on how this crisis has emerged and how it's really been the result of several mutually reinforcing crises, several crises that have kind of combined with each other and become much larger than the sum of their parts. Of course, the most prominent crisis is that in growth. Between 2020 and 2023, living standards for the vast majority of Malawians have been declining. And that's because production has been constrained and it's made it much harder for people to make a living. But underlying this are four other crises. First, we've experienced a fiscal crisis, where despite high spending by the government, growth hasn't really been forthcoming, as much of the money that was spent has been invested inefficiently. A lot of that overspending then led to a debt crisis, where the government is unable to repay all obligations in full, and that's resulted in high interest expenditures. And that's closely related to the third crisis, the balance of payment crisis, which many of us have experienced through fuel queues, but also that had much wider ranging effects on availability of pharmaceuticals, of machinery, of all kinds of things that are necessary to get from abroad. And last but not least, there's been a monetary crisis. The currency struggled to maintain its value, which we experience regularly in markets and shops. And all of that further contributes to making growth lower. So looking at the current economic situation, the starting point for us is to really think of the economy as a complex system. It involves a transaction of $14 billion worth of goods and services every year, about 20 trillion kwacha, and it consists of 21 million Malawians and residents here who are each making their own decisions and trying to make the best for themselves and their families. And so we kind of take the analogy, the metaphor of a large cargo ship like the one on the right, which is also a large complex system. It has a lot of central decision makers, and all of that has to be translated into individual decisions. And just like Malawi's economy doesn't necessarily change course only because the captain or the president cries, you know, we must move in a certain direction. Likewise, a ship functions in a similar way. So we're not just looking at whether what exactly the decisions are that are being made, but we're looking at whether the rudder is turning, whether the direction of travel is beginning to change. And we look at a series of issues. We don't go through all of these in the presentation, but we focus on the different subsystems, the different sectors of the Malawian economy. We start with the state of public finances, we look at revenue, spending, public debt, and then we look at the list, then we look at the balance of payments, so that's all the external trade, all of the relations the country has with the rest of the world. We look at the financial sector, and then we conclude whether we see a change in the direction of growth and welfare. So just starting with fiscal policy, I think one thing that we've seen over the past few years is that deficits have really only been moving in one direction. They've been getting larger. And underlying this are several factors. On the one hand, increasing interest bills from past budgets have to be paid, but we also see that increased investments have been made without the government identifying consumption expenditure that this would replace. And instead, recurrent expenses have been going up, such as compensation for employees, fertilizer payments, and the like. And that all added up to deficits that are larger than 10% of GDP, which puts Malawi among a handful of countries with the highest deficits in the world. Countries ahead of Malawi just include mostly those that are in exceptional circumstances, countries like Ukraine. But as announced over the past year, the government is embarking on a fiscal consolidation program, an effort to reduce the deficit. And so the question for us is this program working? So in terms of the good news, according to government estimates, we are for the first time in over half a decade on track to narrow the fiscal deficit. The recently presented outturn show that the deficit is only slightly higher than in revised budget estimates. But the financial year is not over yet, and there's some other caveats. I think on the one hand, a lot of this is driven by development partner budget support, so we haven't really changed the structure of fiscal policy and of the fiscal balance. A lot of that will likely also have to be revised upwards as the Reserve Bank is recapitalized, which just basically means at the end of each year, the RBM needs to have an even position. And so if it makes losses on its expenditures, on its investments, then taxpayers need to reimburse it. And I think in the past we've also seen that budget reporting can be a bad guide to the expenditure that the government actually commits to in a given financial year. So we have a lot of projects that have a high level of uncertainty in terms of how they will be implemented and financed. Maybe, for example, the Lilongwe Salima water project is a prominent example. And we'll only know in a few years, if ever, what bills have been written now, are being written now, that the government will have to be paid due for the coming years to come. So the second aspect is debt. And I think one thing we've seen is that the country cannot afford to remain on its current fiscal trajectory. Malawi's public debt situation, which is in the graph on the left, has been precarious. Currently, about 81.3% of total GDP is what debt is equivalent to. That's about 12 trillion kwacha. And as you can clearly see, public debt has been increasing over the last few years. Some of these increases, the government has very limited options to reverse them. They need to pay domestic banks, domestic pension funds. And while the kwacha loses value, this means they do have to pay back less over time, but it also means that lenders want increasingly higher interest rates. And dollar-denominated debts, those are the ones in red, are not affected by the kwacha losing value, but the government now has to pay back more and more kwacha for every dollar it borrows. However, there are some positive aspects here. We see that the uptake of debt is slowing and deficits are becoming smaller over time. And the country is beginning to successfully negotiate its way out of some of its commitments and restructure some of this existing debt, most recently with China and India. So I'm going to skip one topic, but focusing now on, I think, one issue that impacts all of us very directly, the exchange rate and the balance of payments. We ask whether the devaluation of the kwacha is working for the wider economy. Obviously, there was a big inflation shock. Everything got more expensive. But I think the question is also, is it actually achieving some of the aims that it intended to achieve? And so there it helps to look at Malawi's recent history all the way back, 2012, 2010 even, as the government has at various points had similar balance of payments challenges. The last time that the kwacha was this overvalued was during the very end of the Bingu presidency, 2011, 2012. And at that time, maintaining a peg to the US dollar was a signature part of Bingu's government. So I don't know if many of you remember, but at the time, many key goods, whether it's fuel or medicine, were often not available, actually much worse than is currently the case. And because a lot of things that are actually made in the country require imported machines, imported ingredients, a lot of those goods weren't available either. So after that, in 2012, Joyce Banda liberalized the exchange rate. It plunged, inflation accelerated, and many people suffered quite significant loss in their buying power. But I guess the question is, was it effective in dealing with the Forex shortage? We look at this graph, which shows the total liquidity in Malawi's official Forex market. We can say that it mostly worked. Not only did Forex volumes double, and importers therefore could bring in more goods from abroad, whether it's fuel, whether it's fertilizer, whether it's pharmaceuticals, but they also kept on increasing over time. So whoever needed dollars and was willing to pay for them found them available. Then in March 2016, the Reserve Bank decided to fix the exchange rate again at around 715 kwacha a dollar. And initially this worked because the RBM had enough reserves to back this up. But eventually the RBM ran out of dollars, and then it borrowed more from the likes of Afrexim, of other banks, the Chinese, the Indians, and eventually those creditors wanted to be repaid. And the RBM was no longer able to buy US dollars at the official exchange rate. In turn, officially traded Forex volumes declined, and they bottomed out at roughly the level where they were before 2012. You see at the end right there. Then we had another devaluation in 2022, a 25% devaluation. And we see that it helped a little, but it didn't fundamentally increase liquidity, as the exchange rate policy didn't change. So what happened 3 months ago during the November 2023 reforms? The exchange rate was adjusted by 44%, and the RBM also announced that the exchange rate would be liberalized, but it hasn't actually implemented many of those measures. So we see in the official Forex market few signs of the boost seen in 2012, and I guess the question is, why is this happening? I think we don't know for sure, but I think one option is certainly that many are comfortable trading in the parallel market. Rates are still better there. And this is different to 2012, when banks offered basically the same rate as the black market. There's still a lot of uncertainty in the market as well. The RBM has announced one set of policies and implemented another. But I think nonetheless, I think we find that this is still work in progress. It's too early to say whether these reforms are achieving their desired impact. These processes take several months often. So I think we've covered a lot of different dimensions of the macroeconomy. I think for us, we then look ahead to see what is the outlook. We estimate GDP growth at 1.6% for 2023, and we expect growth to come in at 3% for 2024. This was based on a number of the reforms the government did, the improvement of electricity access, of fuel supply, among others. But there's also a lot of risk factors. Climate change, we see the current dry spell, weakened private sector, as well as some of the difficulties of implementing reforms as elections approach. And I guess one of the key questions we also ask is, what does this mean for the average Malawian family? We find that 9 out of 10 Malawians working in December 23, which is more than we had 2 years ago, but most of these people are moving into family farming. And so on that count, we can quite decisively say that we're not yet seeing strong signs of the corner being turned. Many Malawians still have a very tough time finding jobs outside of their family farming. And they're also not earning as much as they used to, especially at the very low end. We looked at Ganyu labor, which for the majority of Malawian families, especially the poorest ones, is key for putting food on their table. And we looked at monthly representative data for rural households. And in the figure on the left, you see a light brown line, which is what Malawians earned in terms of kwacha for a day of work between September 2022 and November 2023. And it shows that where an average day of Ganyu labor brought in about 2,100 kwacha in November, it now brings in 2,600 kwacha, but that's far less now, actually 7% less in terms of what you can actually buy with it. And if you look at what you can get in terms of maize, it's really just 3.5 kilograms, which is a loss of a quarter of their income in terms of maize. So just to conclude, as hinted at earlier, we expect growth to increase with an improved macroeconomic environment. However, we'll have to assess the expected strength of this rebound based on some of these recent developments. We expect that the kwacha will likely continue to lose value relative to the US dollar, but we do expect inflation to gradually slow down and decline, and the rate at which prices increase also to come down. Of course, a big part of that is whether the government will be able to stick to its plans around fiscal consolidation, whether it continues to run high deficits, and key to that is what we have here is PFM, public financial management reforms. But of course, there's a lot of risks in both directions. Obviously, there's vulnerability to natural disasters, to commodity prices, but also on the reform side, delays in fiscal consolidation and debt restructuring, as well as continued issues with the exchange rate. So we focus at the end of the report on 3 key areas of reform. One is bolstering economic stability. The second is creating the foundations for growth. And the third is around building resilience and protecting the poor. And I think in the interest of time, I'm only going to focus on one of these, which is how to address some of these macro fiscal crises. Firstly, we focus on the role that more plentiful, more increased foreign exchange reserves can play in addressing the balance of payments crisis outlined earlier. This means conducting some of the foreign exchange auctions announced by the RBM, as well as allowing banks to freely negotiate rates. Secondly, we argue that balancing the budget will need continued and committed fiscal reform, and that involves both the implementation of the current budget as well as next year's. We argue that in order to sustain these fiscal reforms, some key decisions need to be made around public financial management and adhering to the procedures of the IFMIS system. And finally, a really central part is addressing the ongoing debt crisis. And the first step towards this is moving toward a restructure of external debt and ensuring that domestic debt doesn't increase any further. So I think in order for Tesfaye to present as well and have a good discussion, I think these are the main reforms we focus on. You can read more about it in the report. But then I'll also look forward to hearing from you on some of these issues, as well as, of course, the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the Malawi Economic Monitor, every time, this is the 18th edition of the monitor, and then every time they give opportunity for specialized topics to be featured in that monitor. And then this time, Jacob and the team, they gave us this opportunity. My name is Tesfaye. I'm a water resource person working within the World Bank. And Malawi, the wealth of Malawi is based on its natural resource and then human capital. And then this wealth now constantly being challenged by climate change and then also ever increasing population. This is the right time. We think that this is the right time to talk about watersheds. I understand most of you are with engineering background, particularly civil engineers and then hydraulics and then water resources. But to start with, I think it will be good to give just an illustration of what watershed is defined. Basically, it is part of a land that includes also flow of water, and then mainly contributing either a surface flow or groundwater infiltration, eventually feeding into our rivers, tributaries, streams, and then the ocean body. Now, a watershed is considered to be healthy if it has a vegetation cover like this one. The vegetation cover basically serves as a cushion in terms of from the heavy rainfall. Malawi has one rainy season, and then when it comes in a very short period of time, and then it's very powerful. And then when it reaches the ground, it causes that massive erosion. This picture is from Dalizema in Deza, this reserve forest, and then the picture was taken in 2013. This picture was taken for the same place, and then in 2023. And then you can see within 10 years of periods of time how much the uncontrolled use of the natural resources, either for charcoal, for fuel wood, and any other thing can cause. And here in Malawi, particularly, the degradation of the land is largely kind of just driven by two important factors. One is the ever-increasing population, and then also the other one is just the climate change. These driving forces will have an impact in terms of affecting the environment and then putting more pressure on the environment, either in terms of reducing the cultivated land that is available for farmers, soil erosion, and then also silting up of the water bodies, affecting fishing and then the like. It doesn't stop there, but the impact is widespread in terms of affecting food production, affecting hydroelectric power production generation, affecting livelihoods, affecting water quality, and then you name it. The situation here in Malawi is a bit concerning because currently the available figures and estimates indicate that more than 80% of Malawi's land is degraded. To put it in perspective, to make a comparison between adjacent countries, Tanzania is considered to be 51% degraded, but the others, Kenya and Ethiopia, 20%. This gives you an idea in terms of the degree of the problem in which Malawi is in. And then the first victim for this land degradation is soil. On average, through natural process, in a tropical environment like Malawi, nature requires between 100 to 200 years in order to produce the first 1 centimeter top layer of the soil. And then that is the top soil, which is nutrient rich and to grow plants. But unfortunately, we lose that soil just in a matter of minutes whenever it is exposed to that kind of challenge. And then the soil loss, both physical loss of the soil, but also the chemical content of the soil, that's what we are losing. And then it doesn't stop there. The sediment is transported, and then it will have multiple effects, like for example, clogging the hydroelectric power turbines, or if you get any chance to visit where the city of Blantyre is getting its water, you will be surprised to see that it is that muddy water from River Shire that the city of Blantyre, the water utility, is just every time purifying using heavy chemical and then making it available to us. So the damage because of the silt, because of the erosion, because of the land degradation is too much. In addition to that, the water, the rainfall that comes it just comes in a very short period of time. It doesn't give the opportunity for the water to percolate and then recharge the groundwater. So what's happening is it becomes automatically just runoff. And then that affects the availability of water for human consumption. Malawi is in a very dangerous way moving towards a water scarce country. We might think that 20% of the land mass of Malawi is covered by Lake Malawi. That is not kind of just something to comfort us. Right now, the available water for Malawi is 1,027 meter cubics per capita per annum. And then this is the available water for every Malawian. Globally, if a country reaches 1,000 meter cubics per capita per annum, and then it goes below that, then the country will be classified as water scarce country. And then what is more concerning here in Malawi is that this rapid degradation is happening in the last 20, 30 years. And then very shortly, we're afraid that Malawi can go into that category of water scarce. And also, the land degradation wouldn't have good outlook, and then just future, the land degradation is going to aggravate more. And then when this land degradation is just increasing more, it will lead towards more droughts, more floods, once again affecting infrastructure, livelihoods, and then in a situation like that, the impact is once again just in terms of increasing poverty. The experience, the data shows that more people are just moving below the poverty line here in Malawi than just coming out of the poverty line. And disaster is difficult because it crowds, it chokes the government's capacity to respond to regular development, because government has to including partners, they have to respond to disasters. And then we have had Cyclone Gombe, Cyclone Anna, Cyclone Freddy. Some of it on March 2023, Cyclone Freddy hit Malawi, and then specifically here in Blantyre, around Mount Sochi area. And then we haven't yet responded to that one. We are just preparing a project to respond to that one, including government. But another disaster is just coming. So the situation is in such a way that it doesn't give even space and then time, breathing space for the government. So all government resources kind of currently crowded in terms of responding to disaster. And then when disaster hits, it's always the poor which are at the receiving end, because the available kind of just coping mechanism for them is very limited. So what we're saying is that healthy watersheds, if we improve our watersheds, which is the source of all this, we can improve at least the situation slightly. Now, forest is also a good cushion in terms of preserving the natural resource. This picture was taken very recently from the upstream side of Kapchira, and then it's by itself just telling. And then Malawi in the last 40 years or so has lost more than half of its forest cover. And then this has a negative impact both in terms of the environment as well as also the economy in general. Now, the rehabilitation or the degradation of landscapes is not kind of just a new phenomena to Malawi, and then there is ample information and data to support that. But if we make effort, spend time and then effort as well as also resources on restoring land and then the watersheds, it is rewarding. The data that we have analyzed shows that spending $1 on watersheds will pay off 400%, but that is in 30 years of time. And then it doesn't make it attractive. So what we're talking about is just kind of long-term returns, but this is something that we have to do. And then also achieving this kind of just sustainable growth and then restoration of landscapes and then watersheds, it's a bit not straightforward, it's a bit complex, because it is not as easy as going to the poor farmer and then just advise him not to cut trees. It doesn't work that way, because unless we provide alternative sources of livelihoods, unless we provide alternative sources of fuel, energy, it's just meaningless. So we have to think in a comprehensive way that it is not as straightforward as we might think. And then also the current practice and then the policies that we have here in Malawi is not kind of just supporting that. All the agricultural policy is geared towards monocropping, and that is maize. And then everybody likes sima here in Malawi. The current policy and the practice doesn't encourage crop diversification. It doesn't encourage agroforestry. It encourages the use of chemical fertilizer. It doesn't encourage the use of organic fertilizer, organic manures, which is nature-based and a cost-effective way. So there is a need to review all this if we want to make a change. And then I think the government is mindful about that one, and then there are several efforts, and then several policies, and then strategies, and then acts here in Malawi. Actually, Malawi is rich with policy and then strategy. And then we're saying that in preparation, background preparation for this work, we counted more than 13 policies and then strategies related only just to watersheds. The biggest challenge is translating those policies and strategies into action. Otherwise, just policy writing, strategy writing is kind of just the easiest part. And then we are unable to translate these policies and then strategies into a meaningful action because our institutions are very weak. Our institutions at the national level, at sub-national level, district level, community level are very weak. And then also some of the policies and then the strategies are even conflicting with each other. On one hand, we'll have an energy policy that doesn't take into account biofuel, alternative source of energy, and like that one. But on the other hand, we have another policy from forestry, which encourages every land to be rehabilitated and forested. And then also the government, I understand the government has started long ago decentralization policy. Decentralization requires activities to move away from the center and then districts, sub-national levels to do most of the thing, make a decision. Last week I was in Incheo, and then because of the dry spell, some part of the maize has fallen. But the district council and then the local agricultural extension workers still they wait instructions to come all the way from Lilongwe just to come to say that do this, do that. Decentralization doesn't work in an environment like this. We have to empower them. We have to give them responsibility. We have to give them systems, procedures, and then also more importantly the finance, so that for them to do learning by doing. Still, a 1 hectare irrigation contract is being issued all the way just from Lilongwe. We have to break that cycle, and then districts have to exercise in terms of what to do. That way we can improve the empowerment, the ownership in a better way. And then also this creates inadequate coordination and then also ownership. Now, everything is not kind of hopeless. There are good examples also here in Malawi. If we bring our efforts, if we bring our forces together, if we think smartly, there are good examples here in Malawi whereby a concerted partner government and a community's effort is giving us some good results where we can get lessons as well as also where we can get some inspiration. Moving toward this, just our recommendations, we have categorized our recommendations into 3 thematic areas. The first one is just related to land, and then as we have indicated that the current agricultural practice, starting from the policy all the way to the practice, has to change. It has to encourage crop diversification. It has to encourage the use of agroforestry. It has to encourage people to move away from the use of chemical fertilizer and then more use nature-based solutions. In addition to that also, there is a need to strengthen the land rights. Some of the surveys that were made indicate that more than 1/3 of the farmers here in Malawi, they don't feel secure in terms of the land security. And then what we're talking about is just a 20-year, 30-year kind of return investment on the land. If they are not secure enough, they don't care. Because they can't invest, they can't put effort and then the resources for an investment whose return is going to be in 20, 30 years. And then that land security has to be ensured as quickly as possible. There are just few efforts in Kapchira, Zomba, where very recently Malawi is going to launch a computer-based land management information system that's going to give land certificate as a title deed for the user of the land. But this activity has to be scaled up and then cover the entire country. So land tenure has to be addressed. And then also we need to explore some important and then strategically located financing mechanisms in terms of supporting. These are kind of results-based, whereby you can say that this is what I want you to do, this is the resource. Show me the result, I will come every time, monitor it, and then when you do better, just I will add to that. This creates accountability, this creates kind of just reporting and then transparency. With regard to forest, what we are proposing is that there is a need to align, as I indicated, the conflicting policies that are related to forestry, so that they can read and then work in tandem to get the better results. There is also a possibility, if we think smartly, that the limited public resource that is available at the disposal of government can be used in a targeting strategically to encourage and then get the financing from the private sector. Out there in the private sector, there is a huge resource, untapped resource, but we have to think smartly so that we can get that resource to be used for good. And then there are ways to do that one. At the same time also, there is a need, the government has a forest management development fund, which is not currently functioning on market basis, but if we make it to work on market basis, services can be charged on market rate, and then better resource can be mobilized. Similarly, the government cannot police every forest here in Malawi. That kind of attempt doesn't work and it doesn't help, except it creates bureaucracy and inefficiency. Rather, it might be good just for the government to look at ways in terms of public-private partnership in terms of managing the forests. And then there are some promising results in terms of that. And then also with regard to forestry, we are proposing the promotion of agroforestry, because it is a win-win situation and very beneficial. There are also some good examples like planting of bamboos on river embankments, which are showing some good results. But we need to do that at scale. Lastly, on water, what we are saying is that currently we are dealing with water resources. Water resource is a complex area. It is multidisciplinary in nature. It is multi-sectoral in nature, and then it requires multi-agency involvement. And then at this stage, the institutional setups that we have here in Malawi doesn't help in terms of clarifying who should do what and then when and then how. Just to give you just a small example, from the World Bank side, we have one active project, Malawi Watersheds project. We're dealing with 13 different directorates: Department of Lands, Department of Irrigation, Department of Agricultural Extension, Department of Water Resources, Survey General, National Water Resource Authority. All these have their own budgets, but they are thinking in a silo within just their house. There is a need to look at and then just create that vibrant platform so that all of them can work together, plan together, execute together, monitor and then evaluate together, so that they will have the bigger picture. And then also, we have recently revitalized the National Water Resource Authority, which is trying to do a regulatory framework in terms of monitoring the use of water, including abstraction of this scarce resource, but that has to be scaled up, and then we have to strengthen institutions to do that one and build the right capacity. Thank you.
A wonderful presentation indeed, and for sure, a health watershed is one that sustains the ecosystems, functions and provides for human actually well-being and livelihood. Unfortunately, in Malawi, I think we don't really care of whether it is a health watershed or even degraded. As we've seen in the presentation, I think we need to also step up and do something, otherwise we'll all perish. This time I think let's get prepared for the panel discussion. And I know from the presentations we've got questions, and I can see them, that you've got a lot of them. Spare your questions. I think we'll ask them because some of the panelists are those that presented. Right now, may I call upon the following people to be on stage, starting with Mr. Jacob Angel, the senior economic from the World Bank. A big hand for him as one of the panelists. And may I also call Tesfaye Bekulu, the senior water resource specialist. A big hand for him. Wonderful. And you will sit closer to Jacob Angel there. And then may I call Mr. Frederick Banda, the economist. Not a small hand, but a big hand. Come on. And then may I call Dr. Kumbo Kalulu, wash expert. And finally, may I call Associate Professor Faides Mali, the moderator.
Thank you. Thank you once again, Mr. Jacob Angel and Mr. Tesfaye, for the insight into the health of our watersheds. It's a sad story. But before I go into that, all protocols have been observed. In the interest of time, will allow me to proceed with the panel. Let me just recognize our online audience. Thank you so much for joining in. Once again, let me introduce our panelists. To my far left is Dr. Kumbo Kalulu, who is the senior lecturer in the Department of Public Health, Public and Environmental Health Sciences. Then we have Mr. Frederick Banda, an economist, the former head of the Department of Public Administration in the School of Business and Economic Sciences. And of course, our two guests from World Bank. Thank you so much. We have had the report. A sad story. What is the quick reflection to that, Dr. Kalulu?
All right, thanks very much. I think I'll provide a quick reflection of what has been presented, and I'm coming from the water resources side. So firstly, I think I would like to maybe just highlight or expound on what has been presented by Tesfaye. So first, I would like to ask a question. When I think the second picture that was presented by Tesfaye, there was a reaction. I think it went, I think it more or less like people were, I don't know how I can describe that, but I wanted to ask ourselves, how many of us saw ourselves in that picture? So it was a picture comparing what we had in 2013 and what we have in 2023. So the question I have is, how many of us saw ourselves, not the trees, not the soil, but ourselves? How many of us saw ourselves in the picture? Is it Zaranyama? where it came from. Is it Nzaranyama, the picture? The picture that you present, that's Nzaranyama. So I'm asking ourselves, how many of us saw ourselves in that Nzaranyama picture? And probably might say, no, okay, I don't come from Lilongwe, but we have similar scenarios. If we look, I think lately we had a story on MPC TV. It was about Mihiu Forest having a similar predicament. Then, I think from the presentation and also in the report, it emphasizes on one of the challenges that we are facing in terms of infrastructure. We are having infrastructure that is maybe failing to cope up with the runoff that is coming from the water, that from degraded catchments or watersheds. So we have very quick examples. I think it's now becoming more or less like something that comes every year. Whenever it starts raining, there'll be somewhere, if you're in social media, maybe get something, somebody will share a video of a road that has been cut through because of a lot of water that came and swept the infrastructure that we had. Somebody referred to Friday. I think most of us were affected, especially if you look at water supply. Maybe many places, our water boards, they had their infrastructure washed away, and we felt the impact of what was happening. But as our colleagues have presented, if you look deep down, you find that behind each one of these, there is a poor watershed that contributed. Then also just present on the human activities. I think it's something that is becoming very common. We are talking of the watershed, but if you observe, even in terms of our settlements, we are seeing people that are settling in wetlands. Places where we used to, maybe there used to be water courses, that's where people are settling nowadays. So it's also becoming very common. Whenever it's raining, we have water that is going into people's houses, which is something that is recent. I think we didn't have much of those stories in the past. So I just wanted to maybe echo what our testifier has presented, especially on the part of water resources. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So that is a true reflection of the status of Malawi. If we look at the statistics that was given, a very glaring situation, 80% of our land is degraded. We have more than half of the forests that have been lost over the few years. Now, if we look at the population of, for example, Ethiopia, 120 million plus. Tanzania, 63 million plus. Kenya, maybe 50 plus. In terms of climate change, the two issues that Tefai referred to, climate change is ubiquitous. Everywhere, every country is suffering climate change, which places Malawi in a very unique position. Mr. Banda, would you shed more light on what are the key structural issues that why are we in this state? What are the structural issues?
Thank you. The main issue, the main structural issue is the lack of productive capacity of the country. The country is not producing enough to export. And because we don't produce enough to export, we heavily import everything, including toothpicks. And because of that, our economy is our people are perpetually poor. They are always poor, and that is why Rido commented that since the year 2000 years, the Malawi government, the economy of Malawi has been in an economic crisis. The country has undertaken several devaluations in the name of trying to align the Malawi kwacha to the dollar. If you remember, those of you who were there at that time, if you remember, Pingu tried to devalue the currency by almost, it was 10%. Then he died. Later on, there came Joyce Banda as president, and the Malawi kwacha was devalued by 49%, a whooping 49%. The argument was he wanted to align the Malawi budget to the dollar. And as per the presentation of Hugh Riddle, he has pointed out that indeed there are some inflows of liquidity. Forex tried to improve, but that didn't stay long. When it was some mismatch was also could be seen in respect of the foreign exchange. So much so that when it in the year 2023, it was devalued by 25%. In November, it also devalued by 44%. Now the question is, and indeed Hugh Riddle put that one across, has Malawi improved? Has the economy of Malawi improved? So the question still, the answer still lies on the structural issues of the economy. Are we able to produce and export? If you cannot export, if you cannot produce and export, forget about the alliance.
It might be different. So I think I'd also look at, okay, maybe an extension to what my colleague has said. We might think of production, but probably might start thinking from the watershed itself. Because even out of the watershed, there are opportunities whereby we could have some form of products that we could export coming from the watersheds. So maintaining the watersheds, I think it would contribute. But for myself, when I look at what are the issues that we have, I would take it to be, okay, I still more have it, also as I reflect, and maybe I'll ask ourselves as a country, are we really ready to roll out? Because from what has been presented, maybe what Tesfa indicated, for example, we have some measures in place. For example, talk of policies, legislation, and it's been alluded to that we have one of the best of these. But we find that we are not doing this. And just to emphasize on the same, I tried to do a comparison. When I had the report, then I also looked at the presentation. I deliberately chose, there's a document that was written reflecting on the period 1994 to 1999. So that's almost 30 years. And if I was to ask by show of hands how many of us were not born by that time, I'm sure there will be so many, but I'll not ask. But why I did the comparison was I was trying to find out, okay, what were the challenges that we had 30 years ago, and what are the challenges that we have today?
Yes.
Looking at that, if you read through, you might find that it's more or less like a script that keeps on being rewritten. The challenges that we had 30 years ago are still the challenges that we're having nowadays. And I went further even to look at the recommendations that are made.
Yes.
I think they still stand, the recommendations, even going back to the documents I'm talking about, the Malawi Policies and Strategies, 1994, we have the Malawi Sanitation Policy, 2005, and also have the IWRM Plan, a beautiful document, 2008 to 2012. So I find that some of the recommendations, they're there. So for me, that's why I said, okay, I'm asking the question, are we really ready? Are we willing to implement? So I would see that we seem to have some things on the ground, but I think I would still take it towards, yes, as we present these documents, are we really ready to move? I think that's what I would say.
Thank you. So you offer us some recommendations. Mr. Banda has given some recommendations. The report has come with recommendations, and you rightly observe, it's like we are rewriting the script. The question is maybe, where are the pressure points? Where can we gain quickly? And where can we radicalize?
Where can we gain?
Yes, quickly, where can we gain?
Yeah, the first things first, we need to rethink about our agriculture sector. Because no country has ever developed if its people are perpetually poor. So we need to first of all think of commercializing the agriculture sector. This agricultural input subsidy program, AIP, will not take us anywhere at all. Every year we are spending huge sums of money on agriculture, on the AIP. And who gets this? Firstly, a poor person, a peasant farmer in the village, whose land, as per the presentation I've seen today, has been heavily degraded. There is no topsoil whatsoever. What you can see is all red soil. And the ridges they are making, they are very, very, very small. And you are giving them subsidies, maize, or hybrid maize. You are also giving them fertilizer to apply on those, on those pieces of land, and they expect to harvest. So they get the fertilizer, which is now at a higher price. Chemical fertilizer at a higher price. They get the fertilizer, they apply it on that piece of land. They don't harvest anything. In the end, they come back to you, the government again, and say, okay, now we are hungry. We need you to provide us with food. We need to think about that. Maybe do away with the subsidy. See, it's a highly political issue, but since you are saying, where can you be radical? That's where you can be radical. Try to radicalize this. Maybe the funds that is always allocated to subsidies every year. Maybe if it could be allocated to commercial farmers. You can have Yes. So you can have commercial farmers, very big commercial farmers, which on agreed, you can have them an agreed contract, so that when they grow the maize, you buy them at a given price, which can now be distributed to the farmers, to the peasant people at the end. Thank you.
Doc, do you have somewhere we can?
Yeah, I think I would look at 3 areas. The first one being the issue of collaboration across government agencies. I think as Tesfaye was presenting, he gave an example. I think was it Tesfaye or that they are working in a project, they are working with 13 government departments. So I think that's one of the areas also where we have, people might have, the departments sometimes have different objectives, different agendas. So I think that's one area that I feel we can easily come together, pour our resources and implement properly. Then the other one that keeps on coming is the issue of capacity building or enhancement of skills. I think that's an area that we can also can be looked at. We have so many institutions. I think nowadays, even if you look at a country like Malawi, we have so many universities, we have so many public universities that are offering programs that can assist in terms of building the capacity, in terms of watershed management. Then I also like the recommendation that was made in terms of institutions playing their roles, okay, knowing who is supposed to do what. So of course we know that sometimes it appears very simple when you are presenting on paper, but sometimes it becomes very difficult to implement. But I believe if it comes from above, in terms of political, if it comes above, it's something that we have seen some departments being merged, or maybe I've seen new ministries being formed with the political will. I think it should be something that can be done in the short term.
We'll quickly go to Mr. Tesfaye. In terms of water resources, recommendations have been made, and I see our focus is on soft administrative issues, governance issues, and yet one key message from the report is that of building resilience of the nation. Where is the space for some physical infrastructure? Dams. We don't see dams. We are looking at climate shocks that are beyond the capacity of developing countries, climate shocks that are beyond the capacity of communities. Where is the physical infrastructure in all this mix of solutions?
Thank you. I agree with you. When Malawi is compared with its peers in terms of water storage capacity, Malawi is just on the lower side, except the natural storage that we have under Lake Malawi. The artificial water storage, that is in terms of dams, reservoirs, and in the lake, Malawi is just on the lower side. Yes, we can improve that one, but the challenge is those are expensive items. It's expensive. It requires a lot of preparation. And then also, unless that is matched with the appropriate protection of the catchment itself, at the end of the day, that dam is going to be. How many of you have visited Kapchira, just in this room? Kapchira Dam. I'm talking about Kapchira Dam, where we have the electric power generation plant. How many of you in this room?
How many of us have visited Kapchira Dam?
Kapchira. No, even just recently, 2 years, 3 years, yeah. You visited it. Yeah. I wish I have a picture of Kapchira Dam just to show you. For me, Kapchira Dam is not a dam. It is filled up to its neck with silt. And it looks like a stadium, actually. And then when you go to Kapchira Dam, actually, it doesn't have reservoir. There is no water that is being accumulated in Kapchira Dam. What's happening is that on Kapchira Dam, there is a barrage that works with diesel generator. It works 365 days of the year, and then it clears, the way so that Shire River can go, directly to the turbine. And that's not a dam for me. It is a silt dam. So that is what we mean by, on one hand, working on dams. We do recognize that even actually in development perspective, the water reservoir capacity, the water storage capacity that the country has basically determines even its development. But without preserving, the upstream that is feeding into, whenever you go to Lower Shire, the amount of silt that is transported from upstream, it's a bit scary. It's a bit scary. Because just the mud that you see just in the river, and then the silt that is accumulating and then deflecting, so that forcing the river to change its course, that's a bit scary. So I fully agree with you that we have to work on water storage. Big infrastructure has a place, but at the same time, we have to find the right balance between preserving the catchment so that that dam that we are building has to be useful just after its construction. Thank you.
Thank you. And since you already have the floor, in a minute, how do you see Malawi in the next 10 years, the health of the watersheds? What's your view?
As we have indicated in the recommendations part, Malawi is very rich in terms of methodologies, procedures, policies, and strategies. What is missing is translating those policies and strategies into action with an accountable manner. I was indicating earlier that Malawi is the only country that has a self-standing charcoal strategy. No other country has. I haven't seen any other country having. But the issue is that having a charcoal strategy is one thing, but translating that into practice is another thing. So I think, in short, if we exert a concerted effort from all directions, we are not pointing directly just to you. It points also towards us, also to your partners. So government partners, society, work together. We can make a change. We may not completely just rehabilitate the 4.5 million hectares that Malawi has committed in terms of climate adaptation, but we can make a change, and then I'm hopeful.
That's reassuring. Thank you so much. Mr. Banda, what's your view? In 10 years' time, do you see the watersheds coming back to life?
Yes, they can come back to life, only if there's a political will, which I doubt if there is any. And because yes, and because there's no political will, you see, from his presentation, you could see that nothing new has been presented really. We have those policies on paper already, and most of you are aware here, you all know those things. But the thing is, what have we done with those? Year in, year out, we develop policies. But look at what's happening. Implementation is zero. So I'm not sure. If it's done, if there's good political will, yes, it can be done. But in the current environment, I don't see it happening. And because I don't see it happening, it may not succeed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll leave that to government in their own time. They will take theirs. But allow me to focus on our students, our key stakeholders. We need their voice. Maybe they have AI solutions. So can we hear from you any questions, any comments, any contributions to the solutions? You may be our savior. Any hand? Okay, so I will quickly just allow for 5 hands in the interest of time.
All protocols observed. I have a few questions to ask to the panel. The first question is, during the presentation you talked about 81.3 GDP as of current state where Malawi is. But according to the budget statement that was presented by the Honorable Simplex Tichola, he talked about 84.8% GDP as of now. So I just wanted clarification that are the GDPs different? That's the first question. The second question should be, I don't know who is he, but second from this side. He
Mr.
talked
Banda.
about, yeah, Mr. Banda. You talked about the AIP issue, that it's not gonna help us as a country. In a sense that the AIP necessarily go to the people who are in the villages, who are local farmers. But then we have to shift from the local farmers to the commercial farmers. My question is, as the current state of Malawi right now, do you think that completely removing AIP to the local farmers will benefit us as a country to the economy? Another question should be...
I will allow another to contribute, another student to contribute. Sorry. So let's move to another student. Thank you for your contribution. One question per individual, please.
Thank you for this opportunity. All protocols observed. First of all, let me comment on the presentation about environmental management here in Malawi, the state of our environment, our natural resources. The first question that I want us to ask ourselves is about our intellectual property. Malawi has produced graduates since 1964, and there are thousands of them, and as of now I can say million. But what impact are we, calling ourselves intellectuals, having over natural resources in a country as Malawi? Because I can see many of us, we are coming from homes, but no one of us can say I had to plant a tree at home. But then we are those standing in front of people to teach them. What steps are we taking as citizens of the country? Now, my question to this was a comment, but this is now a question to the panel. They talked about land development in Malawi, having land tenure systems as a setback. That is prohibiting many from developing land. And then I can agree with the panel that land ownership licensing is a problem in Malawi because we are following customary land laws. And then we say there are steps being undertaken in order to intensify land registration. But I think this is in a slow pace. it is in a slow pace such that it is not matching the distraction that we are having. What strategies that are proper that can be put in place to make sure that land tenure systems are effective and work to the best interest of people? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll allow one more, then the panelists can take the questions.
Okay.
I will come back for another set of questions.
Okay. I wanted to add something on this guy. What matters that here you have called us to come here, and then I know the political will is the catalyst for any development. But how can you encourage us to take active role wherever you go, so that we can assist the government to implement such a thing, as well as assist the water department to achieve all the problems we have done here? And let me ask a question. One of the questions that one of the World Bank, the first presenter, said that the main part they are taking is to monitor what support on the Cyclone Freddy effects. And what role is the World Bank doing, or any other stakeholder doing, to support the students who have been affected here by Cyclone Freddy? Because they lost PCs, they lost cell phones, which yet some of them are failing even to replace them, and they are affecting their education. If they are not well educated, how can they achieve such a thing without well being educated?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. GDP, is it 81%, 84%? Maybe this question goes to Mr. Angel.
So I think the point was about debt as a share of GDP. Is that correct? 81%. So part of it is just the different estimation periods. I believe the Honorable Minister was talking about the fiscal year. We're talking about calendar years. So you get a slightly different estimation. I think part of it is also that until the NSO announces a finalized kind of calculation of GDP, we're all dealing with estimates, and we have different models. We all kind of converge broadly around 82, 83%, but based on some of these estimation differences, and also having a different time span, fiscal year versus calendar year, we end up with slightly different estimates. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much. I think that's clear.
I think there are a couple of questions which I can attempt. The first question is that the message from our side is not government automatically to stop the agricultural input policy. That is not the message from our side. What we are saying is that there is more room for improvement on that on that policy. Currently, we are saying that it is purely directed towards one crop, and then maize is unfortunately a very sensitive crop. It is so sensitive in such a way that when rain stops, then suddenly just it reacts, and then when it is delayed, it is also the same. And then the current level of productivity that we have here in Malawi is not encouraging, even including maize itself. In other countries, it is more than 6 tons per hectare, but here we are struggling with 2 tons and so per hectare. So what we are saying is that that agricultural policy, the practice itself, needs to improve. And then the policy can come from the government, the input comes from the government side. That input has to be geared towards, crop diversification. But it is not as easy as the way we talk it. I was giving as an example, last week I was in Cheu, and then together with Peter. And then because of the dry spell, the crops were falling. So the agricultural extension workers, they wanted to introduce drought-resistant cassava. But the problem is just no one is interested to eat cassava. Everybody wants to eat sima. So it has to do, just a holistic kind of just approach. At this stage, the agricultural policy is more prescriptive type, kind of just one size fits all kind of just approach. It just provides only DAP and then urea, and that comes all the way. It doesn't give option to the private farmer in terms of, even to make a change. And then it's just promoting that kind. So we're saying that there is sufficient room gradually to move away from non-organic fertilizer towards in terms of encouraging. We're saying that there is sufficient room for improving irrigation here in Malawi. Malawi has more than 400,000 hectares of land that is suitable for irrigation. Out of that, we are able only just to manage to develop only just a quarter of that one. And then out of even that quarter, half of it is with big farms, sugar factories and the like, half of it is with private. And then the remaining 300,000 or so hectares can be developed easily, and then more so, particularly with individual farmers. It's good. Under the Malawi Shire Valley Transformation Project, we are aiming to develop 43,000 hectares of irrigation, but that is expensive. It takes too much time. There is a lot of potential if we develop farmer-led irrigation, at a household level. Then there is more room. So what we are saying is that in terms of the agricultural policy, it requires just some thinking. Otherwise, it is within our capacity. So that's what we're talking about. Land tenure, largely, just most of the land here in Malawi is owned by customary land, but that customary land can be regularized. It can come to the formal stage, and then there are some encouraging steps. Actually, Malawi is going to use a computer-based land management information system. It's going to be launched, I think, the day after tomorrow. But that land management information system quickly can capture all the necessary information, translate that into a computer data, and then just produce the certificate, which is a title deed for the users. Currently, just in Kapchira and in Zomba, we are doing that. What we are saying is that let's scale that up so that it can cover the entire country. Otherwise, it's something doable, and then we can do it. And then, in terms of your question about what the World Bank is doing as an impact of, just the students being impacted by Cyclone Freddy. Currently, there is a project which is about $250 million. And then, as you know, Cyclone Freddy largely affected Blantyre. And then I wouldn't be surprised if students are also part of that kind of just impact. But currently, just by the side of Mount Sochi, there are quite a number of people that were affected by the landslide, which affected their living and then also houses, and then currently they are being sheltered. So as part of that effort, in terms of rehabilitating quite a number of infrastructures, roads, schools, health facilities, and then the like, there is a package that is coming in terms of supporting and then rehabilitating the impacts of Cyclone Freddy. Hopefully, students also will benefit from that one. I'm not sure if laptops and then like that one are going to be replaced, but...
Thank you so much. I think all the issues have been covered, except the impact or issues of intellectual property, the impact, what can we do? I think that is a self-reflection question. No one has the answer. Every individual has the answer. Okay. For now, I'll take another 5, and that will be the last. Please, 1 question per person. So we move to this side. We have a hand there at the back.
All right, mine is a question as well. On rehabilitation challenges, you mentioned something that had to do with labor-intensive technology had to work. Now, my question is, with the state of Malawi now, are we really going to go back to the good old days, or we should just face the reality and experience the hell we're experiencing now? Because what we are focusing now is what are we going to eat today, okay? If I'm sick, am I going to find medicine? Are we going to go back to rehabilitate this? Or we should just face the reality to say we are not going to go back to that good days that we had? Yeah.
Okay, my question goes to the World Bank. What are you doing to enhance political will? Because if we look at the report that you have given, you have indicated that most of the policies, the government is Malawi government is a very good policy maker, but what lacks is implementation. What are you doing to enhance that political will?
We'll take the last two hands here.
Yeah, I think my question is an extension to the question that the guy has just raised. I want to get into the objectives or the main goals of the World Bank, as they say that end extreme poverty within a generation and boost shared prosperity. So, as World Bank, you have seen that Malawi is going down each and every decade. And as you have said in your report that there is no any improvement that is getting in our country as Malawi. So we have heard of a lot of devaluations and the like that have been enforced by the same institutions like yours, the World Bank. Is that trying to give us a way to the solution that we have to go, as in ending the poverty or boosting the economy of Malawi? Again, will that end? I mean, will that be a way to put our economy, as Mr. Banda have said, that we want to balance our economy with the dollar? Will that be in the line with whatever we are expecting as Malawians, or is something to dilapidate our economy? Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to add more on what my colleague has just said. Actually, my question is, if we are devaluating the kwacha, is that the only way of boosting up our economy, or letting Malawians to be dilapidated?
Thank you so much. Over to you.
Okay, no, thank you. These are difficult questions. But no, I mean, let me start with the one on political will. What does the World Bank do to... Obviously, the World Bank has all kinds of projects. We do things like provide financing for different priorities. I think most importantly, though, on the political will, and maybe this is something also that the PS can speak to, is I think you have to persuade people in positions of power to do things differently, to pursue different approaches, to learn about new issues. And I think this is a political system that I think makes it very difficult to achieve change. I mean, I think, you know, we just have to look at the data, right? The incomes are more or less unchanged over 30, 40 years. Poverty rate is about as high as it has been for 40 years. So I think it's needless to say this is not a country where it's been very easy. I think for the local population, for citizens, but I think also for outsiders to really bring about political will in a direction that is developmental. But I think what we do, both through analysis like this report, is try to kind of keep repeating these recommendations over and over again, and to kind of integrate those into our programs, and hopefully over time, there is a leadership and a political class that moves forward on some of these ideas. I think also, and I mean this gets a little bit at the point before about, we I think also get things wrong, and I think we're also quite open to being convinced that we need to rethink things. And I think that's just part of having these kind of exchanges, of this kind of dialogue, whether it's here or in government or in, all over the country. Because I think what everyone does have, I think, as a shared interest is for this country and the people in this country to do better. How to get there is not always easy. But I think we do try to provide recommendations that are based on evidence in other countries, that are based on what's worked here in the past, and the hope is that over time, policymakers are able and willing to implement those against a lot of the resistance and often a very complicated political economy that they face. Maybe also on devaluation. Yeah. So I think the issue of how to manage the exchange rate in a context where you have a very weak exchange rate because you have overall a very weak economy, I don't think it's one where there's a good option, a bad option. I think you're choosing between difficult options. And I think we saw that before the devaluation, right? We had fuel shortages, we had no pharmaceuticals, essentially no essential imports were available. And the country was not really moving either. So I don't think anyone feels like a devaluation is something that's an easy solution or low-hanging fruit or whatever it might be. It is an incredibly difficult choice that comes with a lot of pain. But I think the question is, once you do devalue the currency, once you do adjust the exchange rate, it gives you an opportunity to actually have some of those kind of, bring about some of those changes that, Malawi 2063, that a lot of the big political documents talk about, right? Having an export-led economy, having industrialization, it makes all the companies that are producing things more competitive. It makes it easier for them to sell things abroad. It makes it easier for them to bring things into the country. But of course, there's a lot of pain involved. And I think, I don't think there's sort of the idea that the IMF or whoever views this as an easy solution. But I think, once you do have a situation where continuously your currency keeps losing value and losing value, the devaluation in the end is just a reflection of what is already going on in the black market, what is already happening for anyone who's actually importing goods. The dollar was already effectively worth 1800 kwacha before the devaluation. In a sense, what the government did was recognize that reality and adjust the official exchange rate. But I think more than anything, it creates an opportunity to actually bring about some of those significant reforms to move away from becoming import-dependent, consumption-dependent, and become a producing and exporting country that can actually grow more significantly over time. But of course, I realize this isn't the first time this has happened, and I realize that, this is it's not necessarily like you have one very good option and one bad one.
I think the messages are very clear. Ladies and gentlemen, our distinguished guests, this marks the end of our segment on this panel discussions on the health of our watersheds. Our watersheds are in a bad state, but there is hope. A big thank you to our delegates from World Bank and our panelists, Mr. Banda and Dr. Kalulu. A big hand to them. We can take our seats, and at this point in time, may I hand over to our facilitator. Thank you so much.
Once again, a big hand for Associate Professor Mwale and Tim.
Right, following the program, we'll just have a slight change. Instead of having remarks from Mr. Elias Chimulambe, the Principal Secretary, we will have remarks and vote of thanks from Dr. Nancy Chitera. And may I now call the VC on stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our guest of honor, the Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Water and Sanitation, Mr. Elias Chimulambe, and all government officials here present. Also, let me recognize our delegates from the World Bank here present, the management for MUBAS and all staff, our panelists and the moderator, all students, ladies and gentlemen. Is this good afternoon or good evening? Good evening. Okay. Thank you very much. I will not take much of your time because it's late. I was supposed to say at the beginning that we welcome you all to MUBAS, but I think I can still say it, joining the MC to say welcome to MUBAS. And also a word of thank you to World Bank for choosing MUBAS. We have 6 public institutions here, but also apart from that, we have other higher education institutions here around. And not just that, we also have hotels that could have hosted this particular function today. But that World Bank thought that it was wise to come to our institution today. We don't take it for granted, and therefore say thank you very much and welcome to MUBAS. And we hope that this is not the first time, this is not the end, but it will be the beginning of our collaborations going forward. So today's topic of discussion was turning the corner, health watersheds for a strong economy. And I guess it is also befitting that we are holding this function at an academic institution where we have expertise. We also have academic programs in the area. And apart from the programs and the expertise, we also have a center of water, sanitation, health, and technology development, in short, Watershed. And our students in particular, we believe that they have benefited a lot from this particular engagement and the competition that will follow at the end. I was told that there will be a competition at the very end. So to all our students, thank you very much for participating in these discussions. And I encourage you also to participate in the writing competition that is to come. So as usual, what follows are such kind of discussions and engagements in most cases would be the headlines of doom, gloom of watersheds and water nearing its end and so on. Yet we forget that Malawi, like many other countries in the region, has never really had enough water, and this has been known for years. When I mean water, I mean in our houses, in our homes, if we look at where we are coming from. You know, not enough water to go around, let alone water to allow for dilution, especially in areas where it is most needed, where there is high level of activities. Some of us have been insisting that focus must be on solutions and innovations. And this is where our Research Center of Water, Sanitation, Health and Technology Development plays a big role in this country and beyond. So in my remarks, let me refrain from giving you so-called hard facts about heavy watersheds and their linkage to a strong economy. We want to believe that this engagement and discussion will be an ongoing one, and therefore let me leave that to these ongoing engagements. However, let me dare say that in fact, by shouting healthy watersheds, we want to make the real point in that all that is done to ensure security of water supply is done largely on the basis of this fundamental understanding that the country is generally not endowed with water resources. With increased development pressure, we are bound to have serious challenges of increased pollution and higher demands of water supply. Whichever angle we look at it, infrastructure development and maintenance, resource protection, water resources provision, climate change impact, water and energy, water governance, water pricing, and so on. We can indeed argue about concepts and theoretical constructs of the business and all the economy of watersheds. However, the bottom line is that we have no choice except to manage our watersheds and to ensure their sustainability in a manner that improves the lives of our people. The level of awareness of conservation and demand management has to increase significantly if we are to succeed in what we are advocating for. We can also not afford complacency resulting from the fact that those of us who are able to get together in these beautiful facilities, we are drinking bottled water and enjoying the network atmosphere, we just form a small part of our society. A great number of our people remain with limited access to water and other basic necessities. So the link of watersheds to all aspects of our lives need not be overemphasized. So our engagement and discussions today reflect on these very critical aspects of our society needs that include bringing into the sector those that have previously been marginalized and ensuring that the tools that were created to achieve these goals are put into effect. So in other words, we are discussing it here, but as we are pointing out, this is just a small part of our society. What do we do to take it up further? So I strongly believe it is not just a matter of policy and legislation, but can also be seen as simply good economics or economic sense. So watersheds, however limited, can be a catalyst for social and economic development. And I think that's what we have seen in this particular discussion. And we have also seen that it is a key connector to livelihoods and development. So as many of you are aware, MUBAS is stepping up research and academic programs that are aimed at improving the quality and availability of water for various needs through Watershed. The blue drop, the green drop, and monitoring and enforcement initiatives are all part of this particular process. And we have heard stories that our water policy and registration, they rank among the best in the region. And we have just been told also from today's presentation. However, implementation of these policies has been a serious challenge, and that's what we're discussing here. And it is through such kind of engagements like these ones today these kinds of gatherings, that will take us far. We will need to continue the discussions, and not just the discussions, but out of these particular discussions, what is our take? And what are we going to do next? How are we going to implement it? That's what is going to take us far. I think, as it was pointed out, the implementation. We are good at discussions, we are good at engagements, but then how do we move after these engagements? So there is a clear need for us as a country, including the international community, business sector, and all to work in partnerships to ensure that we succeed in implementation. Because if we don't implement, if we don't move beyond these particular discussions, then we will discuss forever and will not achieve anything at the end of the day. So while at it, I recall a colleague once saying something to the effect that restating the problem several times may remind you of the problem, but it will not bring you any closer to the solution. So indeed, in preparing for this particular remarks, I took notice of the thematic area to be discussed, healthy watersheds and the strong economy. This is indeed, as I've pointed out, a very critical issue to be dealt with at this level. My remarks will not be complete if I do not specifically speak to the issue of education and capacity building in this regard, because that's one of our mandate. I have taken note of the fact that one of the targeted participants in this engagement are senior university students. So as someone who has taught at this institution and having worked in the scientific services environment, I can perhaps speak on this with some level of authority and better understanding of the situation. Now, for us to tackle the future challenges in the water sector, we need to ensure that capacity is built in various fronts. Some of you may be aware that we recently did our curriculum review to develop capacity in the areas being discussed this afternoon. The reality is that, like many sectors, all the different thematic areas that are covered in this engagement, for instance, require a strong cadre of new and young leaders to take us beyond where we may be today. We need to actively ensure that the critical mass is deliberately and cautiously increased as the complexity of the environment we are dealing with increase all the time. This we must do as a matter of course. And the significance of this, especially to healthy watersheds and their link to a strong economy, cannot be overemphasized. And the fact that we have this engagement means that we have to increase the critical mass across all skills levels and requirements. As you may be aware, many studies have shown this very critical gap, which we must urgently address. And therefore, that's why MUBAS is here to do exactly what we have to do, addressing the gap that exists. So let me conclude by saying that these deliberations today is another milestone. It's a key contribution to building solutions and support decision making in these very important aspects of our development as a country, but also as a continent. We cannot afford just to sit, I can assure you that us as a university will be following closely on these particular discussions and engagements through our center, the Watershed, and also through our academic programs, the students that will be graduating there, and even the type of programs in terms of certificates, in terms of short courses, where are we going to make sure that this discussion and engagement that we have today, it should not just be a discussion and it ends there, but it should have, we need to see the results and the impact that would have to come out of this engagement. So finally, allow me to acknowledge and appreciate World Bank, as I said at the very beginning, for choosing MUBAS and for allowing our students to engage and discuss in this very, very important issue. So thank you very much. And to all our panelists, as well as the moderator, thank you for accepting to be on this panel. And what you have said here has given us a lot of insight, but also has stimulated a lot of discussions within us And you can be assured that this discussion will not end here. Wherever we are going to discuss on this issue. But also let me appreciate the Executive Dean of School of Science and Technology and the Executive Dean of Business and Economic Sciences, as well as the Registrar and the whole team that helped in organizing this particular function. And again, to World Bank, I hope this is not the first and last engagement with our community. We will be looking forward to more of such type of engagements, and you are very welcome to do so with us, MUBAS. So to this end, therefore, let me invite our guest of honor to come and speak to us. Thank you very much, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Nase Chitera, Vice Chancellor of the Malawi University of Business and Applied Sciences, MUBAS. The World Bank staff, Jacob Angel, Senior Economist, Tesfaye Pascalu, Senior Water Resources Specialist, the Director of Water Resources, the Ministry of Water and Sanitation, Engineer James Chitete, the Registrar of MUBAS, and the Dean, and all academic staff present here, all distinguished students, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon all. I am glad to be with you or as a guest of honor on this rare occasion, which was organized to allow for an engagement between the World Bank and the Malawi University of Business and Applied Sciences, MUBAS, in relation to the Malawi Economic Monitor, which is a biannual publication that provides an analysis for economic and social development issues in the country. The Vice Chancellor, ladies and gentlemen, as you have heard it all, the special topic in this biannual publication titled Health Watershed for Strong Economy has triggered a discussion on sustainable management and utilization of watershed management and their role in boosting Malawi's economic performance. I am therefore glad to witness this engagement with one of the reputable and highly regarded public university in the name of MUBAS, which I believe will continue to make sure that we advance the agenda on sustainable management and utilization of watersheds across the country. Ladies and gentlemen, as you have heard from the presentation and the panel discussion, there are indeed a lot of services that we get from the watershed, which have a bearing on our economy. For instance, let me mention this, that we benefit quite a lot from the energy, especially from hydropower, from our water for drinking, agriculture production, ecosystem services, tourism, just to mention a few. It is therefore wise and prudent for us as a nation to seriously take interest and ensure sustainable utilization and management of watersheds so that we continue to enjoy all these benefits. Ladies and gentlemen, the level and seriousness of watersheds problems across the country have highlighted, including the consequences we are now frequently having in our country, specifically on the floods. I know last year we had the Cyclone Freddy,
and one of the students asked the bank to support providing laptops, phones, and whatever that they lost. Indeed, this shows that indeed we have serious challenges, especially which comes from challenges on watersheds. You all can recall that last year we had this cyclone right here in Blantyre, and MUBAS, the campus, was not spared. Now this year, we are also having cases of drought in some of the districts. This, as highlighted by the Malawi Economic Monitor, are the effects of the unsustainable utilization of our watersheds. These events, therefore, call for a change in the way we manage and utilize the watersheds and prompt us to find lasting solutions to address catchment degradation. The Vice Chancellor, distinguished students, and academic staff, the government of Malawi is very committed to reversing landscape degradation and protect watersheds across the country. However, watershed issues are multi-sectoral and complex in nature, hence require our collective efforts to address these challenges and problems we are facing. I want to highlight the key role that the academic, and more specifically, MUBAS, has in addressing watershed-related challenges and help build resilience to climate risks and supporting more reliable and sustainable livelihoods. The Vice Chancellor, distinguished students and staff, in the face of these societal challenges, government looks up to the academy to drive and lead in research, innovation, and technological advancements in the areas like efficient water use technologies, climate change, and area warning systems, clean and renewable energy, including alternative source for cooking fuels, especially for our rural masses. Vice Chancellor, ladies and gentlemen, we look up to MUBAS and other universities to lead in developing theories of change and statistical and applied models for development, and help their transition into development programs that are strategically aligned with global, regional, and national local realities. We also look up to MUBAS to help raise awareness about environmental issues, sustainable practices, responsible natural resource management. The Vice Chancellor, I'm very grateful for the wavering support and collaboration which we have with your institution and all other universities, which influence the various government policies, strategies, laws, and regulations. The Vice Chancellor, I remember you provided your experts, your lecturers, to be part of the process when we are reviewing the water policy, the sanitation policy, and even currently we have the expertise from your university that is going through a review of the Water Works Act. We thank you very much. Let us also continue this collaboration, and especially in reshaping the curricula of applicable programs so that the graduates undergo studies which are relevant and effective in solving societal challenges. Let me assure you that my ministry is ready to continue supporting MUBAS to make sure that young engineers, scientists coming out of this institution are results oriented. And I would like to point out that we have so many engineers in our ministry, coming from this institution and scientists coming from this institution that are working under my ministry and are doing a good job. Our Director of Water Resources is a graduate from this university, Engineer James Chitete. I want just to mention that. Apart from Engineer James Chitete, I'm also a graduate from this university. I hope we have environmental health students here. I am one of you. The Vice Chancellor, let me point out that we also have students that are just graduated but are going through internship in our ministry. I would like to point out that we are going to recruit more this year. Those that are graduating from various courses from this institution. Particularly, we are looking for those graduates that graduated from environment and safeguards. So we are going to employ them this year. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I also want to take this opportunity to thank the World Bank for being a reliable partner to the government of Malawi, in particular to the Ministry of Water and Sanitation. My ministry in particular is getting enormous support from the World Bank in the implementation of various projects. I can cite one of the projects which is related to the subject that are in discussion today, what we call MUBAS project, Malawi Watershed Improvement Project, whose focus is to address watershed problems, and we are making commendable progress and planning to upscale the interventions. The Vice Chancellor, students, and staff, in conclusion, let me emphasize that academia has a critical role to play in the development, enlightenment, and application of knowledge and research in advancing our country's development agenda. You know that Malawi has got a vision, which is the Malawi 2063. And within that vision, we are implementing the first implementation plan. And that first implementation plan, we have priorities. And one of the priorities is to manage watersheds. And we are going to implement that. And we need the academia to support the Ministry of Water and Sanitation to realize our aspirations in the first implementation plan. We therefore look forward to enhancing collaboration on watershed management and utilization. I thank you all for listening. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Another round of applause to the PC, please. Right. Reaching this moment, if you've got the program, you would see that there's a photo and media interviews. We will not do the media interviews, but instead we'll have a photo shoot outside. And so the guest of honor and the entourage, together with the VC, will go outside, and then led by the marketing, there will be a few students picked for the photo. Everybody else would not fit into the photo, sorry. All of us will remain here as they go out. But before you leave VC together with the PS, I have a message to the student. I have a message to the student. What are you expecting? Oh, no. Okay, now on the program, when they go out, they take a photo, they'll proceed to the tea, coffee, snacks, as we are here, and afterwards we'll all follow. Oh yeah, but this message is not about tea and it's about the competition that the VC indicated. It's a blog writing competition. The eligibility is only 3rd, 4th, and fifth-year students are eligible, and the prizes here are the top 5 entries will be published in the local newspaper, and the top 2 entries will be published in the World Bank blog sites. Just imagine. Of course, no money. I know that. So you said, what about the top 1? How many kwaches? No, not for that. So when going outside, you grab 1, or because they're not really enough for everybody, so you can even take a picture. It's just the same thing. Taking a picture, grabbing 1. Some phones won't really, take a picture, so they can just keep it. And for those who have got some phones that can take a picture, simply take a picture and leave. That's the message I wanted. So after that, then our guest of honor will take a lead to the tea, coffee, snacks, and then everybody else will be told that we follow suit. Thank you very much. And now the VC and our guest of honor, please, can you proceed? And all the delegates from the ministry and together with the World Bank can follow, and the marketing can lead which students can represent students at the photo shoot. As we all remain seated.